In the following tales, the ordinary world collides with the extraordinary, thrusting unsuspecting individuals and families into realms of terror and darkness. In The Curious Shop, where desires turn deadly, a quiet town's tranquility is shattered by the sudden appearance of a mysterious shop, offering peculiar and malevolent items that grant desires at a horrifying cost. The sinister doll, a gift from the beyond, reveals the unsettling transformation of a seemingly harmless antique doll, which terrorizes the Grant family with its sinister intentions. And finally, The Mirror's Curse, trapped in reflections, beckons you to explore the horrifying consequences when a cursed mirror reveals the deepest fears of those who dare to gaze into its glass. Prepare to embark on a journey through these chilling narratives where the line between reality and the supernatural blurs and the darkest corners of human existence come to life. The Curious Shop, where desires turn deadly. The small town of Ravenswood had always been a place where nothing out of the ordinary ever happened. Nestled deep in the heart of the forest, it was a place where time seemed to stand still, and the townspeople led quiet, uneventful lives. That was until one fateful day when a curious shop appeared on the outskirts of town, tucked away in a narrow alleyway, seemingly out of nowhere. The shop was unlike anything anyone in Ravenswood had ever seen. Its windows were darkened, and the sign above the door simply read, "Curiosity's End." It was as if the shop had materialized overnight, and nobody could remember ever seeing it before. But what drew the attention of the townspeople was not the shop itself, but the peculiar and mysterious items that were displayed in its windows. Curiosity got the better of Sarah Mitchell, a young woman with an insatiable thirst for adventure. She had always been drawn to the unusual and the unexplained, and the mysterious shop called out to her like a siren's song. On a cloudy afternoon, with a sense of trepidation and excitement, she pushed open the creaking door of Curiosity's End. The shop was dimly lit, the air heavy with the scent of ancient books and something far more sinister. Shelves lined with peculiar objects and curiosities stretched out in every direction. Sarah's eyes darted from one item to another, a crystal ball that seemed to glow with an otherworldly light, a row of ancient-looking masks, and a book bound in human skin. A bell above the door tinkled as an elderly man appeared from the shadows, his eyes twinkling with an unsettling knowledge. He was dressed in an old-fashioned suit, and his crooked smile sent shivers down Sarah's spine. "Welcome, my dear," he said, his voice dripping with an eerie charm. "I am Mr. Grimm, the proprietor of this fine establishment. How may I assist you today?" Sarah couldn't tear her gaze away from Mr. Grimm's eyes as she replied, "I'm just looking, thank you." But deep down, she knew she had come here for more than just looking. She had come to satisfy her insatiable curiosity. As she explored the shop further, Sarah found herself drawn to a dusty, ornate mirror tucked away in a corner. Its frame was adorned with intricate carvings, and it seemed to beckon her closer. Unable to resist its allure, she approached the mirror and gazed into its depths. What she saw in the reflection sent a chill down her spine, a shadowy figure with hollow eyes, reaching out as if to pull her into the mirror's dark abyss. She stumbled back in terror, her heart pounding, but Mr. Grimm was there, his skeletal hand gripping her arm like a vice. "Ah, the mirror," he whispered. "It has a way of showing you what you truly desire, my dear. But beware, for the price of that desire can be steep." Sarah tried to pull away, but Mr. Grimm's grip was unyielding. He guided her back to the mirror, and as she gazed into its depths once more, she saw something different this time, a vision of herself, wealthy and successful beyond her wildest dreams. She saw fame and fortune, and she couldn't resist the allure of it. With trembling hands, Sarah made a choice. She reached into her pocket and handed Mr. Grimm a small bag of coins. As she did, the mirror seemed to come alive, its surface rippling like water. Sarah stepped through, leaving the dusty shop behind. In the days that followed, Sarah did indeed achieve everything she had seen in the mirror's reflection. She became a wealthy businesswoman, renowned for her success and ambition. But as the years passed, she realized the dark and deadly consequences of her choice. Her wealth brought her no happiness, only isolation and paranoia. The shadowy figure from the mirror haunted her every step, whispering dark secrets in her ear, driving her to the brink of madness. Desperate to escape the curse of her own desires, Sarah returned to Ravenswood and sought out Curiosity's End. But the shop had vanished as mysteriously as it had appeared, leaving behind only an empty alleyway. As Sarah's life unravelled, she realised the truth of Mr. Grimm's warning. Some curiosities were best left unexplored, and the pursuit of one's darkest desires could lead to a fate far worse than death. In the end, she was left with the knowledge that true happiness could not be bought, and that the price of curiosity was often too high to pay. The Sinister Doll, a gift from the beyond. It was Lily's 6th birthday, and the sun shone brightly through the curtains as she eagerly tore through her presents. Her parents, Sarah and Mark, watched with smiles as their daughter's eyes lit up with delight. Among the gifts was a small, antique-looking doll with porcelain skin and a delicate blue dress. It had curly brown hair and glassy, unblinking eyes that seemed to follow Lily's every move. "Oh, Mommy, Daddy, look," Lily squealed with joy as she held the doll in her tiny hands. "She's so pretty." Sarah and Mark exchanged a glance, noticing the doll's eerily lifelike appearance. It was a gift from Sarah's great-aunt, who had a penchant for collecting old and unusual items. She had always been a bit eccentric, but they had never expected her to give their daughter such a creepy toy. Despite their reservations, they didn't want to dampen Lily's excitement, so they smiled and nodded, reassuring her that the doll was lovely. Little did they know that this seemingly innocent gift would soon turn their lives into a waking nightmare. That night, Lily insisted on sleeping with the doll by her side. Sarah and Mark tucked her into bed, kissing her goodnight, and left the room. As the hours passed, they were jolted awake by a blood-curdling scream coming from Lily's bedroom. They rushed in to find their daughter trembling, her eyes wide with terror, and the doll sitting on her nightstand, its glassy eyes locked on Lily. "It moved, Mummy, it moved," Lily sobbed, her tiny voice quivering. Sarah tried to calm her daughter, telling her it was just a bad dream, but the unease in her own heart was hard to ignore. She picked up the doll and examined it closely. It seemed as inanimate as any other doll, but the unsettling feeling remained. Over the next few days, strange occurrences became a daily routine. Sarah would find the doll in different places around the house, always facing towards Lily's room. Sometimes it was on the kitchen table, other times in the hallway, but it always returned to Lily's side by morning. Sarah and Mark couldn't explain it, but they dismissed it as their own sleep-deprived imagination. As the weeks passed, Lily's behaviour began to change. She grew distant, spending hours talking to the doll in hushed whispers. Her once bright eyes now held a vacant, almost haunted look. She would wake up screaming in the middle of the night, claiming that the doll had whispered terrible things to her in her dreams. Sarah and Mark couldn't ignore the signs any longer. They decided to remove the doll from Lily's life, convinced that it was causing her distress. Mark took the doll and placed it in a box, sealing it tightly and burying it deep in the attic. They hoped that by getting rid of the doll, they could bring their daughter back to her old self, but their relief was short-lived. The next morning, as they entered the kitchen, they found the doll sitting at the kitchen table as if it had never left. Sarah's hands trembled as she picked it up, her mind racing with fear and confusion. "It's back," she whispered to Mark, her voice trembling. "I don't understand how, but it's back." Mark couldn't offer any explanation either, but one thing was clear. There was something undeniably sinister about the doll. They decided to consult a priest, hoping that he could provide answers or perform an exorcism if necessary. Father Thomas arrived at their home, a sense of unease settling upon him as he laid eyes on the doll. He examined it carefully and then turned to the family. "This doll is more than just an object," he said, his voice grave. "It's a vessel for something dark, something malevolent. I fear it may be possessed." With the priest's guidance, they conducted a ritual to cleanse the doll of any evil presence. But as they completed the ceremony, the doll's eyes seemed to glow with an unholy light, and a malevolent laughter echoed through the room. The priest was shaken. "We must destroy it," he declared. "It cannot remain in this world." They burned the doll, watching as the flames consumed it. Sarah and Mark thought their nightmare was finally over, but their relief was short-lived. The very next morning, the doll reappeared on Lily's nightstand, its porcelain face unscathed by the fire. Desperation gripped Sarah and Mark as they realized that the doll was indestructible. It was as if it had a will of its own, determined to torment their family. They tried everything, burying it, throwing it in a river, even contacting paranormal experts, but nothing could rid them of the cursed doll. As the years went by, Lily's mental state deteriorated further, and her parents could only watch helplessly as their daughter's life was consumed by the malevolent force that clung to the doll. They had become prisoners in their own home, tormented by the sinister presence that refused to leave them. The doll, with its glassy eyes and twisted grin, continued to har. The mirror's curse, trapped in reflections. The Grant family had recently moved into an old Victorian house in the countryside, eager to start a new chapter in their lives. The house was filled with antique furniture, dusty old books, and a sense of history that enchanted them. Among the many curiosities they discovered in the house was an ornate, full-length mirror tucked away in a dimly lit corner of the attic. The mirror was an exquisite piece, its wooden frame carved with intricate patterns and its glass surface polished to a high shine. It seemed like the kind of mirror that had seen generations of residents come and go, but there was something unsettling about it, an uncanny aura that hung in the air around it. One evening after the family had settled in, Emily Grant, the youngest member of the family, couldn't resist her curiosity any longer. She climbed up to the attic where the mirror stood and gazed into its depths. At first, all she saw was her own reflection, a young girl with long brown hair and curious eyes. But as she continued to stare, her reflection began to change. It was as if the mirror was revealing a hidden truth about her. Emily saw herself alone in a dark forest, the trees towering over her like menacing giants. She heard eerie whispers and felt an overwhelming sense of fear. She tried to pull away from the mirror, but it held her gaze captive. Downstairs, Emily's parents, Claire and Daniel, were growing concerned as their daughter remained in the attic for hours. When they finally went up to check on her, they found Emily standing in front of the mirror, her eyes filled with terror. "Emily, what are you doing up here?" Claire asked, her voice trembling. Emily turned to her parents, her face pale. "I saw something in the mirror. It was so scary, Mom, like a nightmare." Claire and Daniel exchanged worried glances, but they brushed it off as a child's overactive imagination. They led Emily away from the mirror and tucked her into bed, reassuring her that it was just a trick of the light. The following night, Claire decided to clean the attic, and as she dusted the mirror's surface, she couldn't help but gaze into it. At first, her reflection was normal, but then it began to change. Claire saw herself drowning in a dark, churning sea, struggling for breath as towering waves crashed down upon her. She felt the suffocating weight of water pressing in on her, and panic gripped her heart. Claire screamed and stumbled back, her hands trembling. Daniel rushed to her side and she recounted her horrifying experience. They both felt a growing unease about the mirror, but they couldn't bring themselves to get rid of such a beautiful and valuable antique. As the days passed, each member of the Grant family found themselves drawn to the mirror, unable to resist its sinister allure. Each time they looked into it, their reflections revealed their deepest fears and anxieties. The mirror seemed to feed on their vulnerabilities, slowly sapping their strength and sanity. Emily's nightmares grew worse, filled with the terrifying visions she had seen in the mirror. Claire became consumed by an unshakable fear of water, avoiding even the smallest puddles. Daniel's reflection showed him failing at his job, his deepest insecurities laid bare for him to see. One evening, as the family gathered in the attic, they realized the horrifying truth. Their reflections were no longer a mere reflection of their fears. They were trapped inside the mirror, imprisoned by the curse that had taken hold of their lives. Desperation filled their hearts as they tried to break free, banging on the glass and screaming for help. But their voices were muffled, their cries unheard by the world outside. They watched in horror as their physical bodies became mere shells, their life force drained by the malevolent power of the mirror. Days turned into weeks, and the attic remained silent and abandoned. No one in the outside world knew of the family's fate. The house stood as a grim monument to the curse that had befallen them. And so, the Grant family remained trapped in the mirror, their souls forever imprisoned by the reflection of their deepest fears. The mirror's curse had claimed them, and their lives had become an eternal nightmare, a warning to all who dared to look too deeply into the dark and unfathomable depths of the unknown. Thanks for watching. To support us, please like and subscribe.